Narrative text is a text that tells a story or recounts a series of events in chronological order. So for structure, the first is orientation. This orientation contains introduction to the characters and settings involved in the content of the story. Then the second is complication. This section will start with a paragraph that tells the story of the beginning of an event. Because it is chronological, the problems that arise at the beginning will continue into a long series of storylines containing conflict, climax, and anticlimax. Problem in a paragraph or a sentence that start to lead to the problem of a story. Then conflict. This is more complex. After there is problem, the story will continue with conflict. In this section, the audience will be curious about what happens between one character and another. Then there is climax. The peak of the conflict reaches the main highlight in the narrative text. Then anticlimax or conflict will decrease slowly, and there is solution. The paragraph in the solution section will explain the resolution of the conflict that has been described previously. And then third structure is resolution. Resolution is the end of the story or the conclusion of the story. This paragraph can be a further explanation of the solution. In this section, the writer can also describe whether the narrative text created will end with a sad ending or happy ending. And then the features of the narrative text. The first one, there is characters. It includes character with distinct roles in the story. And then the setting describes the time and place where the events occur. And then there's plot, presents a sequence of events with beginning, middle, and the end. And then conflict, introduces problem or challenges that characters face. And then the last is resolution, provides the outcome or solution in the conflict. Descriptive text. Descriptive text is text that create or describe a vivid image of a person, place, object, or event. So for the general structure, the first is identification. This section is an introductory section. The writer provides a general description of the topic they will discuss or provides a brief introduction about the object. So the writers will explain in their writing about description about the object, place, or person, and so on. And then the second structure is description. In this section, the author has dived further into the topic of his writing. The author or the writer will provide as detailed an explanation as possible about the topic or object to be discussed. The writer will be able to reader to fully understand what object or topic he is referring to. And then, so for the features, descriptive text has description. It utilizes vivid language to provide detailed description of a subject or object. Then sensory imagery. This text appeals to the reader's sense like sight, smell, touch, etc. to create a mental image. And then there is figurative language, may include metaphor, similes, and other literary devices. And of course, vividness, aims to make the reader feel as if they are experiencing the subject. Explanation text is a type of informative text that is designed to explain a process, a concept, or how something works. The general structure of explanation text is the first is general statement. The general statement, the writer introduces the topic or subject of explanation in a general and engaging way. Then there is sequence explanation. So after the general statement, there is sequence explanation. The main body of the explanation text is dedicated to providing a step-by-step or sequence explanation of the topic. Each step or subtopic is presented in clear and logical order. Then after that, we have concluding statement. The conclusion summarizes the main points of the explanation. It may restate the key steps or component and wrap up the explanation. Additionally, the writer can provide a closing thought or emphasize the importance or relevance of the topic. And then the features of the explanation text. The first is using action verbs. Action verbs are verbs that are used to describe the action that is taking place. For example, do, make, create, and so on. And the second, using simple present tense. This text uses the simple present tense because this text explains a fact. And then passive voice. The use of passive voice aims to emphasize the focus on the events taking place with the subject. And then using noun phrase, using technical terms. These technical terms refers to technical terms related to the topic discussed in this text. And then contains an explanation, the process, of course, of this because this is an explanation text. Discussion text. Discussion text is a type of informative text that presents multiple perspectives or viewpoints on a controversial issue or topic. The primary goal of a discussion text is to explore different arguments and opinions, helping readers develop a deeper understanding of the subject. So for the structure, the first is issue. Section is generally at the beginning of the paragraph and contains the placement of the problem or issue that will be discussed or debated. The issue is looked at, of course, in the first paragraph. And then supporting point. In the section, the author presents an opinion which then supports the issue. Each supporting purpose paragraph consists of two components: the main idea of the paragraph and elaboration or description of the issue. And then contrasting point. This is the contra side. In the section, the author will present opinions that oppose issue and problems. This is contra. Just like in supporting purpose paragraph, different points have two forming components. The first is the main idea of the paragraph and the elaboration or description that comes from the main idea of the paragraph. And then, after the pro and contra, there is conclusion or recommendation. Lastly is the author conclusion or recommendation regarding the issue being discussed with the hope that readers can follow and agree with the author's opinion. In this section, the author will present conclusion or also make recommendation from the issue of problem discussed and the issue of problem have been discussed. So for the language feature of the discussion text texts are characterized by specific language. First is the debate language. The use of language that reflects a debate or argumentative tone. This includes phrases such as on the one hand, on the other hand, which is this is a signal contrasting viewpoints. And their conjunction. The use of conjunction like however, although, while, on the contrary, this is to connect and contrast different idea and argument. And then there are modal verbs. Modal verbs like should, must, and could are often used to express opinions and commendation. And then rhetorical question. The use of rhetorical question to engage the reader and provoke thought, such as, have you ever considered? This is always be a discussion text. And then citing evidence refers to facts, statistics, expert opinions, or example to support the various arguments presented. And then formal language. Discussion texts often use formal language and neutral tone to maintain objectivity and professionalism. And then the last is concluding sentences. The concluding sentences of each perspective should summarize the key points and potentially provide a transition to the next viewpoint. This is concluding sentences usually in concluded or the conclusion. Procedural text gives step-by-step instruction for performing a task or process. So for the general instruction, the first is goal. The goal or aim of the procedural text is usually in the title, how to make cookies, how to clean stickers, and other examples. And then after the title, there is ingredients or materials that we need. After knowing the purpose of the text, there will be tools or material used to carry out the next step. Example, we need to material for making cakes, including flour, eggs, cake molds, butter, and so on. After we know the ingredients, of course, we do the steps. The next stage will contain steps on how to carry out these tasks. For example, mix dry ingredients to make cake. After that, stir it evenly, and so on. That's an example. So for the language feature for procedural text, the first is simple present tense. To write procedural text, you must use the simple present tense. This is because the procedural text contains factual sentences about how an item is made and used. The second language feature is connecting words. In procedural text, connecting words are also used, which are useful for connecting the step, such as firstly, after that, last, finally, and many others conjunction. And the third language feature is adverb. Adverbs are used to explain information about time. For example, wait for 1 hour and 5 minutes, and so on. Adverbs are also used to describe a method. For example, slowly, well, fast, and so on. And then common sentences. Common sentences are used in procedural text. For example, add 1 tablespoon of salt, mix the dough, and so on. Common sentences must begin with a verb or verbs such as add, stir, mix, add, or etc. It's usually the verb. Anecdote text to tell the past events in order to amuse the readers or listener by telling the unusual and or amusing incident. For the structure, like the other types of text in English, anecdote text also has a general structure or linguistic structure. So the first structure is abstract. Abstract is the first part of anecdote text, which contains excerpts from unique or unusual events that can attract attention. Then orientation. We will find orientation, which contains an introduction to the characters, time, and place, setting of the story being told. The section has the same function as the orientation section in narrative text we have talking about. And the third structure is crisis. From orientation, we will come to the next part is crisis. Crisis is the part to explain again the unique or odd things that have been briefly taught in the abstract section in more detail. And then incident or reaction. The next section is incident or reaction. In this section, there is a resolution or answer to the unique or unusual thing that is being told. And then the last is coda. Coda is the closing part of the anecdote text. This is part is containing the conclusion or evaluation of the story being told. Usually this is the part that contains humor or that invites the laughter. Okay, so the next is the language feature in a negative text. The first is use past tense, either past simple, past continuous, or past perfect tense. And the next contains exclamations or interjections such as "That's great" or "How big?" And using temporal conjunction or sequencer such as before, after, when, while, until, during, at the time, and so on. The next is using rhetorical question. This type of question that doesn't require an answer. Rhetoric questions are used to create interaction with the reader. And then using intensifiers or words that show intensity to make the story more dramatic. For example, really, very, quite much, quiet, and etc. And using material processes or verbs that show an event or what someone is doing, such as protected, employed, spoke, etc. The last type of text is analytical exposition. Analytical exposition text is a text that elaborates the writer's idea about the phenomenon surrounding. Its social function is to persuade the reader that the idea is important matter. The first general structure is thesis. The starting point for writing an analytical exposition is with the thesis section. This section is the main topic you want to cover. You can also write various reasons behind the problem. The thesis always starts in the first paragraph, and without a clear thesis, an opinion will read less strongly. And the second structure is argument. The argument section is the section where a writer will freely express opinions regarding the topic being discussed. Usually, an analytical exposition has more than one argument or opinion. This aims to further convince readers that the topic being discussed is very important and needs to be looked into further, and avoid writing opinions that are too broad and will make the argument depend from the topic being discussed. Okay, this is suggest. And then the conclusion. The closing of analytical exposition is the conclusion. This paragraph contains a reaffirmation the author's position and opinion on the topic. So apart from that, this last paragraph can also contain the conclusion of the argument you brought. This can also aim to make it easier for readers to understand the content of the opinion you have written. Okay, so how about language features of analytical exposition? The first language feature is the grammar used in analytical exposition is simple present tense. So you have to write opinions using verb 1. When writing an opinion, you need to use words that express thoughts or feelings. For example, experience, feel, know, realize, sense, think, and other. This aims to make your writing more personal, and readers will feel the writing is more emotional because of the author's closeness to the topic being written. And then the language feature is using an internal conjunction that connects argument between two clauses. Internal conjunction can be divided into 4 categories. The first is addition. It's besides, in addition, furthermore, and the other conjunction is comparison. But vice versa, meanwhile, on the other hand, And the third is time. Second, then, next, and so on. And the last is cause event, is consequence. For example, consequence, as a result, and so on. So you can write analytical expression with causal conjunction, reasons why, or cause and effect. For example, using the word as a result, because, by, accordingly, despite, due to, for the reason, and others. This serves to strengthen your argument so that readers will understand it. Without writing down cause and effect, there is high possibility that opinions could be biased or blunders.